Welcome to War Bios. I'm your host, General Biography. Today we're going to explore one of the most pivotal battles of World War I, the Battle of Tannenberg. This epic clash between German and Russian forces in August 1914 would set the tone for the war on the Eastern Front and have far-reaching consequences for both nations. To understand the significance of Tannenberg, we must first delve into its origins. The battle was not an isolated event, but rather the culmination of a complex series of diplomatic crises, military preparations, and strategic calculations that had been unfolding for years. In the early 20th century, Europe was a powder keg of alliances, rivalries, and nationalist tensions. The complex system of alliances between European powers, including the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance, created an environment in which a small spark could ignite a wider conflict. For Germany, the primary concern was the growing military power of Russia, its eastern neighbor. The city of Tannenberg, located in the heart of East Prussia, was a small but strategically significant town that would become the focal point of the upcoming battle. The surrounding countryside was characterized by rolling hills, dense forests, and numerous lakes and rivers, which would pose significant challenges to military operations. The German army had been preparing for a potential conflict in this region and had developed a sophisticated network of fortifications, including trenches, bunkers, and barbed wire entanglements. One key figure who would play a pivotal role in shaping the course of events was General Paul von Hindenburg, a seasoned veteran of the Franco-Prussian War who had been recalled from retirement to lead the German Eighth Army in East Prussia. Hindenburg's experience, combined with the tactical genius of his chief of staff, Erich Ludendorff, would prove instrumental in the battles to come. As we set the stage for the Battle of Tannenberg, it's essential to appreciate the intricate dance of alliances, the complex geography of the region, and the personalities that would shape the conflict. The decisions made by Hindenburg, Ludendorff, and their Russian counterparts, including General Alexander Samsonov and General Paul von Rennenkampf, would have far-reaching consequences, influencing not only the outcome of the battle, but the course of the war itself. In the years leading up to the Battle of Tannenberg, Germany had been strengthening its military presence in East Prussia, with a particular focus on the city of Königsberg. The Germans had also been investing heavily in their railway network, which would play a crucial role in mobilizing troops and supplies during the battle. Meanwhile, Russia was undergoing a period of rapid modernization, with significant investments in its military and infrastructure. However, the Russian army was still recovering from the disastrous Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905, and its military leaders were aware of the need to reform and reorganize their forces. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914 set off a chain reaction of diplomatic crises, ultimately leading to the declaration of war by Germany against Russia on August 1, 1914. The stage was now set for one of the most significant battles of the war, as German and Russian forces clashed in the region of East Prussia. The story of Tannenberg is one of brilliant generalship, logistical wizardry, and the unyielding resolve of soldiers on both sides, and it's a tale that will continue to captivate and instruct us as we explore the primary events of this seminal battle. The German army, led by General Paul von Hindenburg and his chief of staff, Erich Ludendorff, had been preparing for a potential conflict in East Prussia for years. They had developed a sophisticated network of fortifications, including trenches, bunkers, and barbed wire entanglements, which would provide a strong defensive position against the advancing Russian forces. On August 23, 1914, the Russian First Army, led by General Paul von Rennenkampf, crossed into East Prussia with the objective of capturing the city of Königsberg. However, the German Eighth Army, led by Hindenburg and Ludendorff, had other plans. They launched a bold counterattack against the Russian Second Army, led by General Alexander Samsonov, which was advancing on the town of Tannenberg. The German army's innovative use of radio communication allowed them to coordinate their attacks with precision, while their rail mobility enabled them to rapidly deploy troops and supplies to the front lines. The Germans also employed encirclement tactics, using their cavalry to outflank the Russian forces and cut off their lines of retreat. As the battle raged on, the Russians found themselves increasingly surrounded, with their supply lines severed and their communication networks disrupted. On August 30th, 1914, Samsonov's army was trapped in a pocket near the town of Tannenberg with no escape route available. The German army then launched a devastating attack, using artillery and infantry to crush the Russian forces. The Battle of Tannenberg was a stunning victory for the German army, with over 50,000 Russian soldiers killed or wounded, and more than 90,000 taken prisoner. The Russians had suffered a catastrophic defeat, one that would have far-reaching consequences for their war effort. The Germans, on the other hand, had secured a major triumph, one that would give them control of East Prussia and set the tone for the rest of the war on the Eastern Front. One notable example of the German army's logistical wizardry was their use of rail transport to mobilize troops and supplies during the battle. The Germans had invested heavily in their railway network, which allowed them to rapidly deploy troops and equipment to the front lines. This enabled them to respond quickly to changes in the battlefield and exploit weaknesses in the Russian defenses. Another significant factor that contributed to the German victory was their effective use of intelligence gathering and reconnaissance. The Germans had established a network of spies and scouts who provided them with vital information about the Russian army's strength, disposition, and movements. This intelligence allowed the Germans to anticipate and prepare for the Russian attacks, ultimately giving them the upper hand on the battlefield. As we explore the primary events of the Battle of Tannenberg, it becomes clear that this was a clash of titans, with two mighty armies locked in a struggle that would determine the fate of Europe. The bravery, sacrifice, and strategic brilliance displayed by soldiers on both sides are a testament to the enduring power of human spirit and the unyielding resolve of nations at war. The Battle of Tannenberg marked a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front, as the German army had secured a major victory that would give them control of East Prussia. The Russians, on the other hand, had suffered a devastating defeat, one that would force them to regroup and reassess their strategy. The story of Tannenberg is one that continues to captivate and instruct us, offering valuable lessons about the importance of strategic planning, logistical wizardry, and the human cost of war. The Russian defeat at Tannenberg was catastrophic, with over 50,000 soldiers killed or wounded and more than 90,000 taken prisoner. The loss was a significant blow to the Russian army's morale and would have a lasting impact on their war effort. The German victory, on the other hand, was a major triumph that would give them control of East Prussia and set the tone for the rest of the war on the Eastern Front. In the months following Tannenberg, the German army continued to push deep into Russian territory, capturing key cities such as Warsaw and Yad. The Russians, however, were able to regroup and launch a series of counterattacks, including the Battle of the Vistula River, which would slow down the German advance. The aftermath of Tannenberg also had significant consequences for the German high command. The victory had been a major success for General Paul von Hindenburg and his chief of staff, Erich Ludendorff, who were hailed as heroes in Germany. Their reputations as brilliant military strategists were cemented, and they would go on to play key roles in shaping Germany's war effort. The Battle of Tannenberg also had a significant impact on the home front in both Germany and Russia. In Germany, the victory was seen as a major morale booster, with many believing that it marked a turning point in the war. The German government used the victory to promote patriotism and nationalism, with many Germans rallying behind the war effort. In Russia, however, the defeat at Tannenberg had a devastating impact on morale. The loss was seen as a national tragedy, and many Russians began to question the leadership of Tsar Nicholas II and the Russian high command. The defeat also led to widespread criticism of the Russian military's preparedness and tactics, with many calling for reforms. As we explore the aftermath of Tannenberg, it becomes clear that this battle was not just a significant military victory for Germany, but also a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front. The consequences of the battle would be felt for months to come, shaping the course of the war and ultimately contributing to the outcome of World War I. One notable example of the German army's continued success after Tannenberg was their capture of the city of Warsaw in August 1915. The Germans had been pushing deep into Russian territory, and the capture of Warsaw marked a significant milestone in their advance. The Russians, however, were able to launch a series of counterattacks, including the Battle of the Vistula River, which would slow down the German advance. The battle marked a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front, shaping the course of the conflict and ultimately contributing to the outcome of the war. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.